Hi there, y'all. Freeze cracked here. Hey, I thought I would talk a little bit about fluting. I think I've done that before, but I took this rock and I got it down into, kind of a preform, and I got one side ready with the convexity, with biconvexity, where it's some convexity from front to back or from tip to base, and then some from side to side. And I set up a platform and fluted it with the sollberger jig, and so now I'm ready. I haven't done anything after I did that, so now I'm ready to clean up the end and prepare the end for the other side, but also to work on the other side some, because the other side isn't ready. You can see the edge is not straight, there, and this is more convexity than I really want, and it's got kind of a low spot there, so I need to try and work on this some. So I'm going to do that for a minute. So first thing I'll do is take a little bit, grind that in a little bit so it doesn't get messed up as easily. Mess up a platform. And try and take some little blending flakes into the base of the flute channel. Some little blenders going into there. And then what I do is I look at it end on, and I look at how far down the flute channel dips at right here, because there's a bulb of pressure right there. And right there is the deepest spot of this flute. So if it's going to cut through and blow off an ear or both ear or whatever, that's where it'll initiate. So when I come here to take my second one, there'll be a bulb of pressure that'll go in towards meeting the other one. And this looks too thin, and it actually looks like it will meet. So what I'm actually going to do with this is go back the other way a little bit. And you're like, why are you going back the other way? Well, what I'm doing actually by doing that and beveling down is I'm getting down into lowering this and getting into thicker material. So I'll go do that, and then I'll feather it back into here again, and by the time I do that, I will have a thicker area here. I'm having problems with this afternoon sun. I got sun and shade here. That's a little thicker. I don't know if you can tell it. So anyway, I'll leave that alone for the minute. And I'm going to go ahead and come in and start some slightly steep, intrusive type flaking. This isn't straight, so some of the stuff will be intrusive and some of it won't. To a degree, what I'll be doing is trying to, well, the main thing I'm doing is trying to get my convexity just like I want it. But I have to manipulate the edge towards one side, towards one face or the other. Depending whether I want to flake more on this face that needs to be fluted to flatten it some because of too much of an area of convexity, or whether I need to leave it like it is in some areas. I wish I knew if you could see that. That's a little high. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. So this needs to be lower and a little flatter. What you definitely don't want are high spots or low spots along the track that are much, because when that flute's running, if it runs into a low spot, it's particularly bad. High spot, it might step or hinge out. Low spot, what happens is when it gets to the low spot, it's like a kind of like a river slowing down when it gets to a shallow area. I mean, when it goes to a wide area. It widens out, which slows it down and loses energy, but it has a tendency as it widens out to seek the path of least resistance, which can be run out to the edges and then dive and cut through and cut the thing in half. And if you decide that you want a flute, I think the best thing in a way is to get as much vicarious learning as you can from other people with watching other people flute video or live. And the reason I say that is, unless you're really fast at making preforms, there's a learning curve and you ruin some. And so the sooner that you can get the obvious little mistakes and problems out of the way, you'll still have failures. I mean, this one may fail on me, but if you can get rid of the real obvious stuff and lessen the amount of times that you have failures, that'll be good. Okay, so think I'm going to come out a tiny bit more. And then try and smooth this. Remember, you don't want this to be a total concavity because that platform needs to not be a concavity. It really is supposed to be more of a little hill there. All right. So, man, I wish I knew if you could see that. Don't know. It's actually too far out too. Bring it back. When I say too far out, I don't want it to run a shallow flute. All right, so for some reason it seems like second flutes always seem to run thinner or narrower. So in order to try and keep it not doing that, I'm popping out very wide with my isolation, shooting out to the side with it, because I'd like for that crack as quickly as it initiates to spread out and head for the edges, kind of. I hope. So now I've got my little knife edges there. But what I want to do now is come right on the edge of those, go inward on the back of the platform. So now the platform is sticking out, but it's way too flimsy. Learning about the platforms and how to adjust them and get them just right is probably the biggest trick. It doesn't matter as much what the front of that platform and ridge are, so I'm trying to, the reason I'm beveling down like this is to move it backward or inward a little bit on the pressure area of it. And strengthen that up a little bit. Okay, this tip is already ground a little bit. You don't want that to be sharp, because if that's a knife edge, then you might end up fluting both directions. This is definitely not my best one ever, but it may not be my worst one. You would like everything polished. The old boy sometimes took put a real polish on the platform. The idea is you don't want the platform to crush. So anyway, I've done it, so I guess I'll, like I say, it isn't perfect, but it isn't my worst one ever either. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn you around, get this thing set up. Hang on, you're going to get dizzy. Okay, what have we got here? Yeah, you can kind of see. I may adjust this in a minute. I haven't put, I've got one of my bits here, a copper bit, just for the tip to sit on. I haven't got my notches on this bar. I don't have them lined with leather, so I just wrap leather around it. And I put the ears up about near the top of this. And I tighten it just enough to where I know those ears are in the notches pretty good. If the ears aren't, if it doesn't get in there good, then if you end up with forward pressure on it, you know, you can break your ears off. I have this here beside it, and that's to tap it with if it doesn't go when the pressure gets as high as I think the pressure needs to be. I've gone ahead and I've dressed my bit here, and that's critical too. Each time you use it, you know, it gets some pressure damage from the platform, and I always redress it with a file and get it good. You don't want it slipping off, but the flatness of it and the bevel of everything is really important because, and I've already adjusted this. I don't know if it's right or not, but I'm fixing to find out. Yeah, it's close. What I do is I put it on there just like I want it, and then I look from the side and try and make sure that the angle is where I want it. Because what I try and do is get the bit more or less parallel to the point. Because if it's too much of an angle outward, then I'll get a short flute. And if it's too much of an angle inwards, I'll probably cut the thing in half. So it's kind of an eyeball judgment call on that part, and that's fairly critical, but it is what it is. I try and get this board flat because if it's up, then it tends to, when you push on it, it pulls the bit outward at the bottom. If it's down too low, then it lets the bit go inward at the bottom. Either way, you're changing that angle, so I try and kind of have it flat. And the thing butts up against this table. So, anyway, it's kind of ready to go, and I don't know, I don't have that perfectly aligned, but you can kind of see what's going on, I guess. I'm going to put my foot up here and just push on it. I hold it on there for a second and start the pressure, and it went. And it went too soon and too easy. So I got a short flute. Dang it. And I was a little concerned about that. You see that? It's like a Clovis flute. The material, I got this from somebody. The material has been heated a little bit, and the material was a little bit weak, and I isolated it pretty well. But I guess I could have ground it a little more and tried to get a little stiffer because it went a little too easy. But it looks like it would have done fine, and if it had had more pressure, it would have gone on. It might have reversed, but if it did, it was already past the middle, so would have had long enough to make a folsom. And as it is, you know, you could take and cut all this down and still got a little bitty folsom. But anyway, one of the things you can do there, and you know what I think I'm going to do just for grins? I'll stop and come back.